Welcome to session 5 of Coping with COVID-19. And in this session, we're going to talk about this issue of social distancing. My name is Gerry Vassar, President and CEO of Lakeside, and
I'm Diane Wagenhals. I'm the Program Director for Lakeside Global Institute.
Diane, one thing I'm hearing from people is our world has changed. We are now in the phase called social distancing. Not only that, in Pennsylvania, we're in stay-at-home, and on top of that, now we're mandated to wear masks, so we're really closed off from the world around us, and it is a very interesting time. Associated with social distancing are how we try to maintain life, and part of that is this very interesting idea of we're living by Zoom meetings. We're living disengaged from a physical connection, and we've just talked about connections and how that dumps extra cortisol if we're lonely into our bodies. But we have these interesting other effects. I hear people saying things like to me like, wow, my brain is mush. I can't think. Or after I have a day of Zoom meetings, even though I'm sitting still and I'm sedentary, I'm really tired. I'm much more exhausted than I've ever been before as when I was out and about and working. And other ideas of I can't think well, I don't sleep well, all these interesting things that go on for us because of this change. So when we think about that, I know that, here I am talking to you, I'm using my body, I'm using my language, I'm giving you all kinds of cues, but when you're on FaceTime or when you're on Zoom or other platforms, all it is my face.
Right.
So it's only what I am looking at. And so all this other stuff in my body that I would use to communicate, which I think are other kinds of cues and means of communication, is sort of absent because I'm all from here up.
Right.
And so it seems to me that's a lot more work. And I remember the other night we had a board meeting at Lakeside, and my chairman of my board goes, after the board meeting, I'm exhausted and I need to go to bed. Well, we had a whole array of people and voices and faces all in a row, and we were talking to everybody at once, and it was exhausting.
Right.
So can we talk a little bit about what this is for us and why we're feeling some of the feelings we're having when we're social distancing from people?
Sure. And I think in a way we're trying to fake out our brains. We're trying to have our brains think it's the same as when we have a normal conversation with somebody. And what you're pointing out is it's not the same. It's a very different experience for your brain to try to figure out what have you ever seen a cat or a dog come up the first time and see a reflection in a mirror and how they are just like and get at first it's like, oh, that's another cat or that's another dog. And it doesn't take too long before they get it that, no, that's just a reflection. In some ways, I think that's what we're doing, is that our brain is like, wait a minute, that's not real. So what do I do with that? Because I'm supposed to be relating to something that's on a screen.
Sort of an inanimate object, not a person.
Yeah, or what do they call those things that are the holograms?
Right.
We're talking with a hologram on a screen. And so at what point can we make that seem natural? And yet recognize that our part of why I think people get exhausted is that the brain we have that tells us what's real is really getting challenged. It's like, you're real, but you're not real, but you look real, and, but I can't feel, that expression, I feel you, can't feel you quite so much.
So does that mean other parts of me are working harder brain-wise? Is that
Probably.
why I'm exhausted?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, the brain is this amazing organism, and it's, all working together, and the different parts are working together. So if you screw up one part that's not really able to pull things in as well as it did, or the same ways as it did before, that's going to tip everything in the brain, I think. So all of a sudden, the brain is really struggling. It's really having, a sense of confusion. And then it's going to be a sense in that confusion of I have to put more energy out to try to figure this out or try to assess somebody. I don't have the cues. So if I look at somebody and I'm trying to figure out who you are, what's going on, and I need to use, what we use a lot of is our intuition. We do a lot as we watch people's body language. We do a lot of interpretation. And now you're taking away a lot of the ways I do that. And that's a normal part of how we're going to connect with people. So we're really messing with what should be the normal way.
So what I'm hearing is there's not only this intuitive piece that we're missing, there's also all the body cues and all the other things that we use, and it's almost like part of the whole idea of using social media has this disembodying effect.
Exactly.
It's taken me out of my normal sense of this is how I relate to, like I'm using my hands right now. I'm leaning. I'm all these cues.
And you're three-dimensional, by the way.
Right. And so I usually can use all of that to communicate to you.
Right.
And now I can't. I have to use just from here up. So it feels to me, as people are doing a lot of the Zoom meetings and social distancing types of communication using social media and other platforms, we are working harder.
Yeah.
We're trying to communicate the same thing we would normally, but using only that. And I would also think that with so many people lined up, look like those old Brady Bunch commercials. You know, you've got all these people all lined up, and they're all looking at you and all talking, and you're trying to figure out what's happening.
That was the first Zoom. Did you? I just
It-
realized that.
oh,
I
it
just
was.
realized that.
That's
It's like
the first Zoom meeting-
first Zoom was Brady Bunch. They were way ahead of their time. Who knew?
So anyway, okay, so that's one of the realities of social distancing. We've talked about isolation already and all the impact of that, and we've talked about some of the social media dynamics and how that makes us work harder. What are some suggestions as to different things that we can do, even as we have to live in this COVID-19 phase of life for us? We're all out here
This new world.
tuned to a whole new world of how we communicate or don't communicate.
Right.
There's all this other all these other issues about what we can and can't do, and now I'm confined and I've got to do something that's practical. What are some
Well,
ideas?
I'm going to borrow directly from Kurt Thompson, who wrote an article called A Body of Work. And in this, he's a well-known psychiatrist, and now he's really developed his abilities to understand neuroscience and has written some very excellent books on that. So this is an article where much of what we just said is in this article, and he gives some suggestions to help us with these things. So I'll read some of them to you, and we can even talk about them if we want to, but make it a practice to take at least 3 5 to 10 minute walks every day. It's about doing it frequently.
Okay.
Not one big long walk. It's breaking up and interrupting a pattern that's probably not so healthy for us. So we're
create some brain airspace to
Yes,
be out,
exactly.
breathe, and move, and
Right.
be out. Yeah.
If possible, change your location of work in your home. So, you know, if your whole house now is your office, it's not, you don't have enough boundaries, enough separation. You know, if the kitchen is where you're eating, but then you clear off everything and now it becomes your office, that's a little confusing too. So having, if you can, have some other place. And the same's true for the kids. You know, do they have a place this is our school in our house, not have it all kind of merged together?
Okay, so move your locations around a little bit from what you normally do.
Yes.
Okay.
When possible, stand while doing work, especially when using a screen. So that helps your body to be a little bit more active than sitting passively.
Yeah, so we know body movement is regulating in and of
Yes.
itself, so creating more opportunity to do body movement while you're doing social.
Exactly,
Zooming and FaceTime and all of
Yeah.
that. Okay.
As you are able, and I think that's really important, the one I'm about to say, because I'm thinking of very large families, this could really annoy people, but as you're able, limit the number of people on video calls to 3 or less. Of course, tell that to your family of 16. It's like,
Right.
which 3 are we going to talk to?
Right.
But the idea is to have it be less difficult on your brain to be looking at so many faces. It's going to be easier if it's just a couple.
So less people are easier for the brain to process and therefore less stressful.
Right.
Okay.
Greet as many people as you can whenever you are able.
Okay.
So when you're out and about, if you do get out and about, going to the food store, the drugstore, or the liquor store, wherever you're going, and you're running across people, not running across people, but you know what I mean. You know, make sure you make some kind of eye contact. The problem with the masks is we only see eyes. So how is it that we're supposed to now notice when somebody's smiling, or, we're losing a lot of the facial language.
One
we
more
have.
problem with
There
social
you go.
distancing. Oh my goodness. So,
Plan for daily singing or worship while standing.
huh.
So,
So that's an issue of using your faith
yes.
and understanding that that's an important part
Right.
of how we regulate ourselves.
Yes.
That idea of faith, contemplation, maybe prayer. Is that another?
That's another one. But before I get to that, he says in here, tell your mind and soul that you are quite alive and that you are not alone. So that's this communication with yourself.
Right.
And number 7 is talk about your anger. So part of this is that he mentions, and other people have said, you go from the panic and anxiety and all that to getting irritated to getting angry. So at what point, and it's kind of part of grieving too, is that you can go down a pathway where you start to get really angry about what the heck, how come my life has been turned upside down?
So we need somebody to talk to
Yeah.
about how we're feeling during these moments.
And if you're on the receiving end of somebody else, they may need you to be the one to receive their messages that I'm really angry about this.
So it's predictable that will
Yeah.
be some anger and issues that lead to irritation, frustration, whatever you
Absolutely.
want to call it.
Right.
It's predictable that's going to happen because of this different world that we're living in.
Yep.
And therefore, we're not only needing to express it, but hear it.
Very well said.
Thank you.
And that last one is practice contemplative prayer. And for people who are spiritual, that makes sense. If that's not where you're coming from, you can still be very contemplative, which is giving yourself time to really think. But the aspect of prayer and how that can be very calming and a way to receive something as well as give. So,
Well, thanks to Kurt for those suggestions.
Yes.
And thank you for joining us for this session on social distancing as a part of our Coping with COVID-19 series. And we hope you'll join us again. Thanks.
thank you.